My veil smelled like hairspray and panic when the message came. The hotel's bridal suite was a bit too cold, the AC humming against the warm June air pressing at the windows. My makeup artist, Tasha, had one hand beneath my chin, tipping my face toward the ring light. "Close your eyes, baby," she said, brush soft as a whisper against my eyelid. I did, obedient, listening to the faint tick of the wall clock and the rustle of my mother's dress as she fussed with bouquets near the door. My phone buzzed against the vanity, a small, insistent insect. I would have ignored it, should have, but it lit up, and habit raised my eyes. The screen showed a message request on Instagram, just the first line of a stranger's text sliding into view like a storm under a door. I didn't read it then. Not all of it. The room was a snow globe, white dress, baby's breath, ivory ribbons, my own reflection floating in the glass. "Open," Tasha murmured. The brush moved to my bottom lashes. "Look up." Buzz. I swallowed. On the countertop, right beside the ring tray, my phone woke again. My thumb moved before my brain decided anything, cracked open the message like a door I would later wish I'd left shut. "I'm his wife. Here's our son." The words were simple, black text on white. Below them, a photo of a baby, round cheeks, a little sleeper with moons on it, eyes the color of river stones, mid-laugh. Under that, another photo. The same baby in a car seat, fist around a set of keys I recognized. Marcus's key fob. The same gray, the same little worn edge where he and I had argued playfully about him needing a key organizer. Details my mind grabbed like handholds on a cliff. I couldn't feel my mouth. Tasha kept working, blissfully unaware. My mother was on the phone by the window whispering about a late cousin who couldn't find parking. The string quartet was warming up 2 floors below. The notes bled through the floorboards like memories of old songs. Another message. A third picture. The baby propped on a shoulder I also knew, the slope of it, the mole. Marcus's navy shirt I'd ironed last week for a client dinner, laughing at how he always tried to smooth the fabric himself with his hands. The phone slipped a centimeter on the vanity. I studied it with my fingertips. "I am his wife," the stranger wrote again, as if she had felt my denial reach back at her through the glass. "He will tell you I'm crazy. I am not. We have a son. Check the county clerk website, marriage record. Then call me, please, before you say I do." My throat tasted like metal. The vein at my temple beat under Tasha's ash-brown eyeshadow. I pulled my gaze from the phone to my face in the mirror and saw a woman I recognized, then realized she was about to be someone else. Before I paused a ceremony, before I pulled up a public record with trembling hands and read a stranger's message into a room full of people who loved me, there was this moment, half mascara, veil cocked, heart looking for a place to hide. And maybe you're thinking, how could you not have known? Maybe you're asking, what kind of woman walks that far into a lie? I asked myself the same questions. To answer them, I have to tell you about the parts that looked like truth. I met Marcus on a Wednesday that smelled like hand sanitizer and takeout soup. I work as a middle school counselor in a public school a few blocks from the clinic where my mother manages appointments. That day, I'd swung by to pick her up for lunch. He was at the desk, carding through paperwork with my mother, a face I hadn't seen in the waiting room before, clean-shaven, a little worn under the eyes, the kind of handsome you notice twice. "Mr. Henderson, it'll be ready in a few minutes," my mother said to him. She smiled at me. "Maya, this is the nephew I told you about? The one with the logistics job." He turned, and his smile was easy, not slick. "Aunt Denise Braggs," he said, offering his hand. "I'm just the guy who makes sure people get their boxes on time." "You make shipping romantic," I said, and he laughed. His laugh was low and warm. It curled into the room and made the fluorescent lights feel less harsh. We sat with my mother, 3 paper cups of tea and a Tupperware of her collard greens on the desk, and talked about nothing, the traffic on Peachtree, the high school basketball team in the news, how my mother has a soft spot for any man who says, "Yes, ma'am." He got called away when a nurse waved a chart. He raised his hand in apology, and I noticed he had those hands that look like they know what to do, half callous, half care. He waited for us in the lobby, insisted on carrying my mother's purse like it was an honor, and walked us to the curb. He didn't ask for my number. He asked if my mother wanted him to bring anything for Sunday dinner. He showed up with a pie and washed every dish he used. It wasn't fireworks. It was a broom on a porch after a storm, a steady sweep. That's what I tell myself now, that it was the steadiness that made it easy to believe. He texted a day later. Not a WID, but, hey, hope those 7th graders are nice to you today. If not, I'm collecting all their phones. We met at a diner with a cracked pleather booth near the window. He ate his fries one at a time, laid the ketchup down like careful red stitches. He asked about my father, and when I told him Dad had died the year I graduated college, he didn't try to fix it. I'm sorry, he said, voice quiet. I bet he'd be proud of you. Marcus lived across town, in a neighborhood with brick ranches and big oaks. He worked nights sometimes. The shipping yard had trucks in and out at all hours, he explained, and he was the kind of manager who didn't ask his team to do anything he wouldn't do. He had a work phone he kept face down on the table. He said it kept the distraction down. My boss calls at wild hours, he said, apologetic when it buzzed. He didn't answer it on our dates. He didn't take pictures much. Just not a social media guy, he told me, and shrugged. He liked to cook, one-pot meals, mostly, and he could fix a leaky sink like he was born with a wrench in his pocket. I brought him to my mother's house on a Sunday in late fall. The air smelled like chicken roasting, lemon slices, and rosemary we'd fussed over like we were writing a love letter to it. My older sister, Alana, came with my nephew, a 2-year-old named Jeremiah who solemnly offered Marcus a grape and followed him around like a shadow after Marcus showed him how to make a tower with the old set of wooden blocks our dad had kept in the den. You date men who know how to stack things? Alana whispered, nudging me with her hip. Keep this one. He didn't flinch when Mama asked him if he could change her light bulbs. My mother watched him closely that night, the way mothers do when they know their daughters are betting their hearts on something. Later, in the kitchen, she wiped the counter slow and said, he is quiet, but not empty. That's good. She didn't clap or cry. She just put a plate of leftovers in foil for him to take home, and when he thanked her, she touched his forearm like she'd already forgiven him for anything he might do wrong. He proposed on a Monday. We were at the park where I like to sit and write notes for my students, small encouragements I tape to their lockers when they're going through it. He brought coffee and a pastry in a white paper bag and made a joke about how my love language is cinnamon sugar. He didn't kneel. He held my hand with both of his, and the wind rounded the lake, lifting the edges of the napkin on our bench like a hand lifting a veil. Maya, he said, I want to marry you. I want to build something plain and true and ours. No big promises, because life is heavy. But I will carry it with you. I said yes, because I wanted a heart like that next to mine. The ring was modest and beautiful. I held it up to the light like a small moon. Wedding planning pulled us into a whirl. We kept it simple, a church hall, white folding chairs, my Aunt Ruth's famous punch in big glass bowls, a playlist my cousin promised would make my mother dance her shoes off. Marcus pushed for small. Let's keep it for us, he said when I asked about a videographer. I like the things we remember with our own eyes. We picked a date in June, like my parents had. We chose magnolias because my father loved them. We sent invitations I addressed by hand, the tips of my fingers turning black from the ink, my tongue tasting like envelope glue for days. On the dining table, a seating chart bloomed, post-it flowers marking who shouldn't sit next to who. My mother sewed a little blue ribbon into the hem of my dress. Aunt Ruth steamed my veil until it fell like a breath on a window. Marcus's family was less present. My dad's sick, he explained, and Mom's with him a lot. He had a sister I'd never met, she lives out of state, he said. He demurred over engagement photos. I just hate cameras, he said, and I didn't push it. We took a few on our phones in the park and saved them in an album he named later. Here's the thing about a lie that's going to break your life. You don't hear it. You hear the chorus around it. Marcus called me on lunch breaks to ask if I'd eaten. He fixed my mother's loose porch rail and left sugarless tea for her in the fridge. He brought me discount flowers on random Thursdays, the cellophane crackling like laughter as we unwrapped them. He had a shelf in my closet where he kept his second pair of sneakers. His toothbrush leaned a little toward mine in the ceramic cup by my sink. Back then, I mistook tidiness for truth. Back then, I thought a closed door was privacy. I didn't know it was a wall. Back then, I mistook tidiness for truth. Back then, I thought a closed door was privacy. I didn't know it was a wall. The first odd thing was small enough to laugh off. It was February, one of those gray Atlanta days when the sky sits low and heavy like a wet towel. Marcus swung by to take me to lunch between my counseling sessions. The heaters in his car hissed warm air that smelled faintly like dryer sheets and something sweet, powdery clean. I pulled my seatbelt and saw it then, a single pale blue sock, baby-sized, tucked into the seam where the back seat meets the floor. It was the kind with little white clouds stitched around the ankle. I held it up. "Since when did you start dressing your feet this cute?" He glanced over, then smiled. "Oh, Ty from the warehouse, I think." His wife's always asking him to pick up their kid from the daycare. He needed a ride last week. I made a face at him, playful. "You're just driving everybody and their babies around, huh? What can I say?" He shrugged, reaching for the turn signal. "I'm a generous chauffeur." I put the sock in his cup holder like a joke prize and let it go. My life is always full of children's things, stickers on my skirt from a student hug, a backpack full of glitter, and mystery snacks leaning against my office chair. A baby sock didn't feel like a warning. It felt like the world I already lived in had rolled a marble under his seat. The second thing was a receipt. I was cleaning up my kitchen one evening after he'd cooked us a pot of gumbo, steam fogging the windows, the smell of andouille and thyme winding through the house like a lullaby my father might have liked. I tossed scraps, wiped the stove, and found a crumpled slip on the counter near his keys. Grocery store. Late night. Formula. 2 packs. Diapers, size 2. And a bouquet of daisies. I smoothed the paper with my palm. He walked in from taking out the trash, rubbing his hands together against the cold. "This yours?" I asked, holding up the receipt, my voice easy but careful, like when I ask a student about a vape I found in their backpack. Not accusing. Just opening a door. He glanced at it and laughed. "Oh man. That guy in front of me last night, the cashier messed up and put his stuff on my bill. I didn't feel like waiting 10 minutes for them to fix it. They comped me the flowers. Lucky you." He kissed my forehead. "You got diaper bouquet romance tonight." I rolled my eyes. "When you know," I said, sticking it to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a peach. Maybe I wanted it there to see if he'd flinch when he walked past it. He didn't. He just tapped it once like a silly story we shared, and we ate soup on the couch with our feet tucked under the same blanket. The third was a sound. He called one night from his place, the line a little tinny. "I'll be there after this last truck gets sorted," he said. In the background, faint, I heard something music. It curled around the edges of his voice. A slow, chiming tune with soft words that sounded like a lullaby. I know lullabies. My students tell me which songs their moms sing. My sister sings to Jeremiah the same 2 lines every night, and it's become like a doorbell, pulls him towards sleep wherever he is. "What's that?" I asked. "What's what?" His tone sharpened a notch. "The music," I said, gentle. "You got a new playlist?" He paused a beat. "Oh man, no, that's one of the drivers with his radio on outside. They keep their phones playing while they load. I told them to shut it off, but you know." He chuckled, too loud for the small joke. "I'm working with toddlers sometimes." I made a noise that let him move on. "You're sweet with your toddlers," I said, and he exhaled. "I'll see you soon." He arrived 20 minutes later, cheeks cold, jacket smelling like the night air and motor oil. He warmed his hands on my tea mug and rubbed my shoulders while I graded papers. We didn't talk about the music again. When you are building a future, you learn to stack your doubts like coasters under a heavy glass. You make them neat. You put the glass down and say, "It isn't wobbling, see?" Alana didn't let the neatness fool her. We were in her kitchen one Saturday, Jeremiah on the floor, rolling a toy truck back and forth with a sound effect like a tiny thunder. Alana chopped bell peppers with the ferocity of a woman who seasons her food and her conversations. "When's the last time you went to his place?" she asked, eyes on the cutting board. Last week, I said, washing lettuce, the water cold enough to make my knuckles ache. We watched a movie. He fell asleep halfway through. Typical. And then, she slid the peppers into the pan. How many drawers in his dresser you've opened? I laughed. Nosy. Curious, she corrected. A man's drawer tells the truth about his life. Socks don't lie. What are socks supposed to say? I asked. They're socks. Socks say if he lives alone. If somebody folds them with love. If there's glitter on the edges because a little girl stuck her fingers in the hamper. If he rushes or if he cares. She looked up. Listen, I like him. He washes the pots. But you can't marry a closed door. I've been to his place, I said. It's tidy. He's tidy. Tidy like a bachelor or tidy like somebody's rushing to erase himself? I dried my hands and leaned against the counter. He's got a roommate called Quiet and a roommate called Industrious, I joked. But after I went home, I thought about his bathroom, the way the soap dish had a single bar, no little hairs of someone else around the drain, no stray bobby pins. I thought about 2 floral mugs in his cabinet, the kind with painted violets, unlike his taste. Neighbor left them, he'd said when he caught me looking. She's always giving me stuff. Another night, I tried to FaceTime him after a long day. I wanted to see his face, to let his voice pull the knots out of my shoulders. He picked up and kept the camera low, pointed at his chest, the ceiling fan whirling lazily above him. My hair looks wild, he said, laughing, dragging the phone just enough that I saw a wall behind him with a pale square where a picture must have been recently removed. A strip of paint a little brighter than the rest. You don't need to see this chaos. You're pretty even when you're chaos, I said, but something in my stomach turned. I told myself he was shy. I told myself some people just don't like cameras. I told myself a lot of things I would later have to untell. Spring pressed its shoulder against winter. Bridal magazines and RSVP cards multiplied on our dining table. The seamstress pinned the bodice of my dress while I stood on a small platform, my mother fussing with the hem, her breath warm on my calves. Marcus's tux was ready. The playlist was set. We were, too, or so it looked. Then came a phone call that moved the glass. It was a Sunday afternoon after church. We'd spent the morning feeding pancakes to Jeremiah and letting him help stir the batter until the kitchen smelled like sugar and the floor sparkled with flour footprints. Marcus had said he needed to swing by his dad's place to check on him. He kissed my cheek, the scrape of stubble making a gentle rasp, and left. An hour later, my phone rang. A number I didn't know. A woman's voice, steady, practical, asked, "Hi, is this Maya? This is Dr. Patel's office. We're calling to confirm tomorrow's appointment." For the line fumbled. A paper shuffle, a muffled whisper I couldn't make out. "Sorry, wrong number," the woman said, sudden, and hung up. I stood in the middle of my kitchen with the spoon still in my hand, the sunny smell of lemon dish soap rising up like a memory. Wrong numbers happen. Offices misdial. I set the spoon down and turned the faucet off and on again, as if the water could rinse the feeling out of the air. That night, Marcus showed up late. He pressed his keys into my palm like a peace offering. "Traffic," he said. And my dad needed help with his meds. "How is he?" I asked, putting the keys on the hook by the door. They swung gentle. "Sleeping," he said. He went straight to the sink and washed his hands. He stood there a beat longer than necessary, watching the water swirl down, his jaw tight. He dried his hands with my red dish towel and turned, his face as open as a window. "You good?" "I'm good," I lied, because I was still in the business of carrying the glass without chipping it. We had exactly one fight before the wedding. It was about the guest list, which is to say, it was about something else. I wanted to invite my old college roommate. He wanted to keep it under 100 people. "I'm sorry," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "Big crowds make me," he exhaled, searching. "I just don't want a spectacle." "It's a wedding," I said, not unkind. "It's going to be a little spectacle." "I want it to be sacred," he said, jab of irritation under the words. "I don't want strangers there." "She's not a stranger," I said. "She helped me through my dad's funeral." He closed his eyes. "Okay, he said finally, and smiled the tired smile of a man who's given in to a smaller thing so he can keep the bigger thing in his hands. Invite her. Later, after he left, I stared at the ceiling in bed and tried to name what hadn't been said. I thought, he is protecting something. I thought, maybe it's just himself. I thought, give him grace. We ask for it ourselves. In those months, I built us a home with lists and calendars and ribbons. I bought a sugar bowl because my mother believes every home needs a place for sweetness. I learned the rhythm of his Monday tiredness and his Wednesday jokes. I learned the taste of worry and how to swallow it so it wouldn't burn coming back up. The week before the wedding, Alana looked at me over coffee, her thumb rubbing a circle on the rim of her mug. If you ever need to call it, she said, you can. There's no shame in saying, this doesn't feel right. I laughed, but it sounded thin. Say that to the deposit we put down on the hall. Money's money, she said. Your peace is your life. I kissed her cheek and told her not to be dramatic. I told her I had never been more sure. Both things were only half true. It is possible to be two kinds of sure at once, sure of what you want, and unsure if the person you've chosen can carry it with you. On the morning of the wedding, the weather turned perfect, like it had overheard my prayers and decided to show off. The sky poured blue into the windows. The magnolias opened like hands. I showered, shaved the back of my knees with too much concentration, and smelled like roses and nerves. At the church hall, my mother hummed while she pinned my hair. Tasha lined my eyes like a careful artist finishing a landscape. The string quartet tuned. The room was a white field, a place you could lay down a life and start it again. My phone buzzed. And then it buzzed again. The second buzz pushed the message up the screen like it couldn't wait to be seen. I'm his wife. Here's our son. Another bubble came in as Tasha leaned back to admire her work. Girl, your lashes could fan a forest fire, she said, stepping aside so I could see. In the mirror, I was a painting someone had taken time with. The veil lay over my shoulders like something kind had touched me. Give me 2 minutes? I asked, voice small but steady. She nodded, busying herself with brushes. My mother glanced up from the bouquet, eyes warm, a question in them. I smiled back, the kind you put on like powder. In the bathroom, the tile was cold under my bare feet. I locked the door and sat on the closed toilet like it was a pew. The exhaust fan hummed. My phone felt too hot in my hand. The profile was private. A small circle photo, the same baby from the pictures, cheek to someone's collarbone, a woman's jawline visible at the edge. 3 mutual followers, one was a nurse from my mother's clinic. The message expanded when I pressed it. I know you don't know me. My name is Elena. I am Marcus's wife. We married at the Fulton County Courthouse on a Friday, 12/17, Book 1429, page 88. Our son is 9 months old. I am not trying to hurt you. I did not know about you until last week when his cousin tagged him in a photo from your engagement party and I saw your registry. I am so sorry you are finding out like this. He knows I'm writing. He will say I am crazy. Please check the marriage record. Then do what you need to do. Below it, another photograph, Marcus in a navy shirt at a counter I recognized, the small gray marbling of the county clerk's office, the sticker on his chest that read visitor in red. A fourth photo, a birth certificate, names blacked out except for Henderson, Marcus A., visible in the father's line. A fifth, a hospital bracelet with his name, his date of birth. I thought of the lullaby I'd heard over the phone, the formula receipt on my fridge, the baby sock, and felt the coasters under the glass slide. I typed before I could think, how do I know this isn't someone from his past trying to ruin today? 3 dots. They paused like she was choosing her words in a room where a child slept. Then, I don't want him. He is my husband and the father of my son. He and I have been trying to work through months of lies. I am done. You can call me now. Or check the website. I will answer. I opened a new tab, fingers a little clumsy. Fulton County Clerk Marriage Records. The hotel Wi-Fi dragged like a heavy dress. The page loaded. A white background, a pale blue header, a search box. I typed, Henderson Marcus A. I added his birth year because I'd filled out his tux rental and had read it off a form. Enter. The circle spun, then blinked into a line of text. Record found. Henderson, Marcus Avery. Spouse. Morales Elena. Date. December 17th. Status. Recorded. My body didn't move. My heart, that faithful animal, kept beating. The fan purred. Somewhere below me, the cellist made a small mistake and laughed. I took a screenshot. The sound was too loud in the quiet room. I pressed the phone to my ear. The call connected on the second ring. She didn't say hello the way some people do, with a smile built into it. She said it like a doctor walking into news. Maya? Yes, I said, surprising myself that my voice worked. This is Maya. There was a hush, a little rustle. When she spoke again, her voice had that carefulness of someone who has learned the hard way what happens when you speak too fast. I'm sorry. You don't know me. I wish you never had to. I found your registry through a relative who follows Marcus's cousin. I saw your name. I thought, no woman deserves to stand up in front of everyone and not know. How long? I asked. My knees pressed against my dress. The fabric whispered. We dated for a year, she said. He said no big wedding, so we signed papers. He moved in. He was gone at night a lot because of work. I got pregnant. He promised. He always promises. A thin breath. I could hear a soft coo in the background, a sound like a small bird testing its throat. I have to ask you, I said, because hope is stubborn even when the math is done. Are you still together? We are still married, she said, and that word laid itself down like a brick. We live in the same apartment. We share childcare. We have not been together since I found messages 2 months ago. He told me he was going to end things with you. He told me he needed time. Then I saw the date for the wedding and I realized what he meant by end. End as in pretend I don't exist. Tasha tapped on the bathroom door, light, her voice soft. You okay, babe? Minute, I called, hand over the mic. I stared at the speckled countertop. A small smear of lipstick stained a tissue. It looked like someone had kissed a cloud. Why today? I asked. Because a woman at the clerk's office picked up, she said. And because I had to say it before you walked down an aisle. Her voice went lower. I don't want to embarrass you. I don't want a scene. I want you to be safe. Safe. The word lodged in my throat. Thank you, I said, because somewhere in the middle of my shock, something raised its head like a person in a crowd recognizing someone waving at them, not gratitude, exactly, but a recognition that this woman, who owed me nothing, was placing truth in my hands and stepping back. Thank you for telling me. Whatever you choose, she said, and there was a child's fuss there, growing into a cry. She moved the phone away. Whatever you choose, she repeated, voice trying to be 2 directions at once. I will not text again. I am not trying to make a spectacle. I know, I said. I did. I could hear it in her voice, the fatigue that comes from being told you are exaggerating pain that is ordinary as rain. I won't text you again either, I said, and I meant, I don't want to use you for the parts of the story that make me feel cleaner. I hope you have people who love you. I do, she said, and then a laugh came through, surprised, like I'd told a joke she hadn't expected. I have a sister who would fight a train. Take care of yourself, Maya. You too, I said, and the line went quiet. When I unlocked the door, Alana was there with 2 bobby pins in her mouth and her phone in her hand, as if she'd smelled something burning through the walls. What's wrong? She asked without ceremony. I handed her the phone. She read fast, jaw tightening, the bobby pins clicking, then setting still. Oh, sis, she said softly, and the softness hurt worse than if she'd cussed. She handed the phone back and put her hands on my shoulders. What do you want to do? My mother moved into the doorway behind her, bouquet forgotten in her hand, her eyes taking in the arc of my shoulders, the tilt of my chin. Maya? I had the sensation you get when a wave pulls your ankles, and you have to decide whether to resist or let it lift you. I stood, smoothing my dress as if we weren't standing inside a fire. I need to pause the ceremony, I said. My voice surprised me by not shaking. I need 10 minutes to look a man in the face and ask him one question. Then I need to tell the truth to the people who came to see me become someone's wife. My mother nodded once. She has the kind of faith that looks like practicality. She lifted the bouquet to her chest like she was about to walk a gift across a room. I'll get the coordinator, she said, and left, her shoes soft on the carpet. Alana's eyes were steady. Do you want me in the room with you when you ask him? Yes, I said. Stand by the door. If I have to walk out of my own wedding, I want to do it where someone who loves me can see my spine. Tasha, who has watched brides cry over lashes and the wrong shade of blush, didn't ask. She pressed a hand to my forearm, grounding. Do you want a tissue? She asked. No, I said, surprising us both. I want my lips done. Red. The one that doesn't move. She smiled like she'd been waiting all her life to serve a woman in a moment like this. Yes, ma'am. Her hands were gentle, and the lipstick was a color my father would have liked to see my mother wear when they went dancing. The coordinator, a calm woman with a clipboard and a headset, slipped in and closed the door. We're going to ask the quartet to replay the interlude, she said. We can stall 15 minutes with beverages. I'll tell the ushers someone is fixing a bustle. Tell them the bride asked for a window, I said. A real one. She nodded. Do you want me to bring him to the side office? Yes, I said. Please. In the side office, the air was cooler, the overhead light a little too bright. A framed print of the church's founding members watched us from the wall, solemn, in black and white. Alana stood by the door, arms crossed like she might break in half if she didn't hold herself together. I waited, hands folded in my lap like a child waiting to recite a poem. Marcus came in with his tie slightly off-center, a small crease at the corner of his mouth like he'd been smiling too hard. When he saw Alana, he knocked on the frame with his knuckles, a polite habit that used to make me like him. Hey, he said to me, confusion knitting his brow. Everything okay? They said you needed me. I held up my phone, the marriage record on the screen. The blue header glowed like ice. When I spoke, my voice didn't have any decoration. Are you married? His throat moved. He glanced at Alana, then back at me. Maya, he began, reaching for the old furniture of our life, the nickname, the softness. I kept my face like a closed book. Are you married? I asked again. Right now. Not once. Not when. Now. He sat like his knees had been told what the truth would weigh. Technically, he said, and the words slid across the floor and hit the door. I've been trying to. No explanations first, I said, because I have spent years teaching children how to say the sentence without the excuse attached. Answer me. Yes, he said, finally, softly, as if softness could make it kinder. Yes. My hands lay quiet in my lap. The veil tickled my neck. I noticed a thread at the seam of my hem, pale as hair, curled like a question mark. The woman who messaged me sent me your records. Your child's birth certificate. Photographs, I told him, plain, even. She said you would call her crazy. She was, he pinched the bridge of his nose, a gesture I had once read as tiredness and now understood as buying time. We were not. I made a mistake. I was going to end it. I thought if I could get through today, everything would settle. I was going to tell you after. We can fix it. We file. It's paperwork. It's just. The word echoed, emptying the room. I thought of my father telling me once, when I came home from high school crying over a boy who borrowed my notes and forgot my birthday, that apology sounds like I did this, not like the weather did. Marcus, I said, and without trying, my voice had my father in it. You do not get to make me illegal today and legal tomorrow because it fits your schedule. You do not get to put me in a dress and promise me son when you've built a roof you sleep under with someone else. He covered his face with his hands. His shoulders rose and fell. I would have put my palm between his shoulder blades once, told him to breathe. Today I kept my hands to myself. I love you, he said, the sentence a thread he flung across the room, hoping to pull me back with it. I loved the person you told me you were, I said. Those are not the same man. Silence sat with us. Outside, the quartet began, air on the G-string again, like a memory circling. Alana shifted her weight, but she didn't speak. She is good at letting a door close without adding her shoulder to it. I stood. The chair made a small sound against the linoleum. I'm going to speak to our guests, I said. I am going to tell the truth. You are going to listen. And then this will end. Maya, please, he said, rising fast, a hand half raised like a man at a bus stop who knows the driver saw him and is pulling away anyway. Don't do this. We can fix it. We can. Sit down, Alana said, in the voice of a woman who will fight a train, and he did, surprisingly, like something in him recognized a line drawn on a map. I took one breath for myself. The kind that says, you're a person in a room with a door. You can walk out of it. I lifted my skirt a fraction so I wouldn't trip, gathered my veil, and went to find the microphone. The microphone felt heavier than it looked. The hall had gone soft and expectant, like a hush before a prayer. The magnolia centerpieces threw a lemony sweetness into the air. A child giggled somewhere, the sound a brief bird over a quiet field. Good afternoon, I said. My voice floated up into the high ceiling like it had been waiting for a reason to find itself. The quartet quieted, bows hovering. The officiant, Pastor Ruth, who has known my mother since they taught Sunday school together, stepped a little to the side, her hands folded, her face a tenderness I could stand on. Thank you for coming, I continued, and I meant it more than I'd ever meant a polite sentence. Thank you for traveling. Thank you for wearing shoes that pinch and suits that are too hot. Thank you for loving me enough to be here. A small ripple of laughter moved through the room like wind in tall grass. I took a breath. I need to tell you something, I said. And I need to tell it to you before anyone asks you to say amen to something that isn't true. I could feel Alana by the side door, a point on a compass. I glanced once at my mother. She didn't nod or shake her head, she simply stood, her bouquet in the crook of her arm, like an anchor against her ribs. The man I was about to marry is already married, I said. The words fell clean and simple. No drama, just gravity. To someone else. And they have a child. It is a particular sound, the collective intake of breath. It is a wave that lifts and then leaves everything a little changed. I held up my phone, not to flash it in anyone's face, but to place the truth where it belonged in the light. I received a message. I checked the record. It's true. I will not be sharing a husband. Not today, not ever. At the edge of my vision, Marcus stood. I didn't look at him. I had already looked at him in the small bright office, enough for a lifetime. There will be explanations, I said, preempting the story that was about to flood the room. I am not interested in them right now. I am interested in dignity. My hands were steady. I felt them and marveled that bodies know the turns before the mind catches up. You came to witness a vow, I said. You will still witness one. I take a vow to myself today, in front of you. I vow not to make a home where I am an afterthought. I vow not to stand in rooms where truth cannot breathe. I vow not to twist myself into a woman who can swallow betrayal like communion. An older aunt in the second row put a hand over her heart. A friend of Marcus's from work stared down at his shoes like they'd become a map to somewhere else. I will return your gifts, I said. Every envelope, every saucepan wrapped in that pretty floral paper my cousin picked out. I will also ask the coordinator to please serve the food you came here for. If you want to stay and eat, please do. If you need to go, go with my blessing. I tried to smile. It cracked only a little. No sense in wasting Aunt Ruth's punch. A few people laughed again, small and brave. Pastor Ruth stepped close enough that I could feel her warmth. Do you want me to pray? She whispered. Not for a miracle, I whispered back. For a spine. She nodded and faced the room. We aren't always given the news we want, she said, voice low and even, the kind that settles a child and a crowd at once. We are always given a choice about how to carry it. We will love our sister Maya by letting her lead us in how this day goes. If you are tempted to gossip, I ask you to carry your jawbone in your pocket and your heart in your hands. Someone let out a small huh. The tension bent. The coordinator, in a miracle of logistics, had water set out within minutes. The quartet began to play something that sounded like a road through trees. On the side of the hall, Marcus's cousin Tarek, a man with a wide grin I'd once liked, stood up, mouth open as if he had a speech ready to do emergency repairs. His girlfriend tugged his sleeve. "Not now," she hissed. He sat. Marcus spoke from the aisle, his voice carrying because a room will always lend sound to a man who has had it. "Maya," he said. I turned my face toward him because I did not want the story to be that I couldn't look. His tie was loosened. He looked like a boy who'd stayed out too late and now had to explain to a woman whose time had value. "Can we please?" He gestured toward the back, toward privacy. The word trembled with a promise I no longer had compartments for. "What I have to say, I already said," I replied. Pastor Ruth laid a hand in the air, the universal signal for sit down. He did. An aunt his, I think, though I had met her only once, hid her face in her hands. The sound of someone softly crying stitched itself into the instrument's notes. My mother stepped up beside me then, and faced the crowd like a woman who has lost and kept walking. "There will be no anger served with the chicken," she said, light but firm. The room exhaled, and a murmur of gratitude moved forward toward her like a tide. I handed the microphone back. It clicked off with a neat little sound, like a lid on a jar. I turned and walked down the aisle that had been measured for joy. The pedals on the runner clung to my shoes. A few stuck to the hem. Alana met me at the side door and slid the bolt behind us like the world could knock if it wanted and we could choose to answer. In the dressing room, the quiet was loud. Tasha reached for my veil. "May I?" she asked. "Yes," I said. The pins came out one by one, each tiny tug like a punctuation mark closing a sentence. The veil fell into her hands, and then across the back of a chair, a soft white cloud passing. My hair, freed, felt heavier for a second, then light, like the moment after you set a bag down and your hand still curls around the handle. Alana handed me a pair of flats she'd stashed for later, in case my feet got tired. I looked at the white heels, their honest little faces. I slipped them off and placed them neatly by the chair. My bare feet on the carpet felt like telling the truth. "I'm going to ask Pastor if we can use the side room as a holding space for gifts," Alana said. There was no question in her tone that we could handle this. "We'll organize labels. People will understand." "Not just understand," my mother said, perching on the edge of the vanity table, her gaze a soft pressure on my cheek. "They will respect you." Sometimes respect is served cold and late, but it comes. A knock on the door made the three of us look up. It was the coordinator again, headset slightly askew, cheeks flushed from the work of turning a wedding into a meal. "We've opened the buffet," she said, with the triumphant pride of a general who has rerouted her troops before the bridge collapsed. "We've started a list at the gift table for return addresses. If you like, I can have someone drop envelopes at each table for people to write their addresses again. It'll save you time." "Thank you," I said, and meant not just for the envelopes. "Could you also ask the DJ? The playlist 19 through 28, she asked, eyes crinkling. "Yes. The good one. Not the first draft." I laughed then, the hiccup of it surprising all of us, and she beamed like she'd won a contest. "Also," she said, "two of Marcus's coworkers left quietly. One of them gave me his card. He said if you need anything legal, practical, call." She placed it on the vanity. The card was embossed, the name thick with confidence. Aaron Marks, HR manager. Part of me wanted to fold into the treatment this day had tried to give me and sleep for a week. Another part put on its shoes, literal and metaphorical. "I'd like to go out there," I said. "Not to make a speech. To hug who I want to hug. Then I'd like to leave." We stepped into the hall together, three women moving like a small fleet. People rose as if we were a strange kind of processional. Aunt Ruth intercepted me with a bowl of her punch. "For courage," she said, though it was mostly sugar and ginger. I sipped. Courage can wear many friendlier names. I hugged my cousin, who whispered, "I'm proud of you," into my hair. I hugged a favorite teacher from my school who had come with a casserole and a smile so wide it had held me through semesters. "You taught us about boundaries," she said. "We should have known you'd remember your own lesson." Near the back, one of Marcus's aunts approached, her mouth tight in a way that told me she had been adding sums fast. "I didn't know," she said, before I could ask her to keep her peace. "We didn't know. If I had known," she trailed off. The end of that sentence was a cliff no one needed to hang over. I touched her arm and spared her the jump. You don't have to explain, I said. He made choices. We're all just walking past them now. Marcus stayed by the far wall, flanked by Tarek, the two of them looking suddenly like boys at a school dance. He didn't try to cross to me. Maybe Alana's face at my shoulder dissuaded him. Maybe his own shame, fresh and still hot, held him. I didn't give him the courtesy of hating him out loud. I gave him the truer courtesy. I did not center him in the room I was reclaiming. After a while, the noise shifted from tight to human. The sound of forks on plates. The tinkle of glass. Someone laughed at a memory not connected to me. Life, unrelenting, practical, moved forward. I let it. I returned to the dressing room, the three of us closing ourselves in with the sound of the latch. I took off the earrings my mother had loaned me and set them in her palm. Keep them for me, I said. I'll wear them on a day that's honest. She tucked them into the small pocket inside her clutch, the one she uses for mints and folded tissues. Honest days do come, she said. Sometimes in plain clothes. A text buzzed. It was a number I didn't know. I expected cruelty or pity. It was neither. It read, "We are proud of you." Signed, the 7th grade girls. A photo followed, a cluster of my students holding a poster board that said Ms. M for mayor. Someone had drawn a circle around a heart and put a crown on it. I laughed and cried at once. Tasha handed me a clean tissue without comment. We should go home, Alana said, and it sounded right, like the way Rain knows which gutter to choose. We'll send a note later this week. We'll start the returns. Tonight, we watch a movie with a woman who survives. Not a tragic one, my mother said. I vote something where the dog also lives. Yes, I said. And extra butter on the popcorn. I picked up my vow book from the vanity. It was small and navy, tied with a thin ribbon. I slid it into my purse and felt its weight. Not lost. Postponed. Private now. Mine. We left through the side door, the afternoon sun laying a warm hand on the back of my neck. Outside, the asphalt held the day's heat. A magnolia tree, fat with blossoms, shaded the corner of the lot. A petal fell and landed at my feet, velvet soft against skin. I took off the flats, curled my toes against the ground, and breathed. We drove with the windows cracked, the car filling with that late afternoon warmth that smells like hot pavement and cut grass. My mother kept both hands on the wheel the way she does when she's holding stillness steady. Alana sat beside me, scrolling through her phone as if she could herd incoming messages into a pen and keep them from trampling me. You know, my mother said after a few blocks, your grandmother called off a wedding the day before. I turned, surprised. You never told me that. She didn't talk about it much, my mother said, mouth twitching at the corner. He showed up smelling like somebody else's perfume. She sent everybody home, took the cake into the church kitchen, and cut it into slices for whoever needed a sugar fix. Kept the dress. Wore it to a cotillion 6 months later, dyed pink. Your grandfather said he knew when he saw her in that dress that she married herself before she met him. I smiled despite the ache. Married herself, I echoed, like a coin turning warm in my hand. At home, my house felt like a stage after the actors have left. The bouquets my mother brought yesterday looked suddenly like props, their bright faces too cheerful in the living room light. I slipped out of my dress and into a soft t-shirt, the cotton catching still on the places where the pins had held. Alana spread a blanket on the couch, an old habit from our childhood when bad days required nests. My mother boiled water. The kettle whistled like a small train coming into a safe station. Tea, she announced, setting mugs on the table, sugar bowl between them like a centerpiece of ordinary. Then lists. Lists. My family's way of building back from rubble. Alana opened her notes app. We'll start with gifts, she said. Practical. I'll create a spreadsheet, names, items, return addresses, whether the gift has been returned, whether a thank you note was sent. We drafted a message for the group text I had made for wedding updates. I typed and erased 3 times before the right word settled. Thank you for loving me. The wedding did not take place. I am well. We will return all gifts over the next 2 weeks. Please help us by including your address if you brought something in person. I appreciate your privacy and your prayers. My thumb hovered. I hit send. The little gray delivered bubbles lined up like a row of small, polite nods. Within minutes, responses came, a cascade. Hearts. Prayers. Proud of you. Whatever you need. One friend, who had been saving jokes for my bachelorette party we'd canceled, wrote simply, "My spare bed is yours if you want it. Also, my dog thinks everyone's perfect. That may help." A handful of messages tried to dig for details. I let them sit without response. There is a difference between people who want to know to hold you and people who want to know to hold court. I can tell now, like I used to tell with my students, who is raising their hand to understand and who is raising it to be seen. While the tea steeped, I gathered Marcus's things. The second pair of sneakers on the bottom shelf of my closet. The hoodie he forgot on purpose after a movie because he liked how it looked hanging on my chair. The toothbrush leaning toward mine like it had something to say. I put them in a box and found a permanent marker. My hand wrote without asking my heart for permission. For Marcus. Pick up from Alana. No contact. As I sealed the box, my phone buzzed. A number I knew even without the contact name. I watched the screen. It lit, went dark, lit again. A text followed. "I'm outside. Please." I walked to the window. He stood on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, tie gone, shirt sleeves rolled to his forearms like he was ready to build something or dismantle it. He didn't look up at my house. He stared at his shoes like he was reading them a bedtime story. My mother materialized at my shoulder. "Do you want us to answer the door?" "No," I said. "Not him. Not today." I texted back. "Please contact Alana to arrange picking up your things. Do not come to my home again. Do not contact me." He wrote a paragraph that squeezed my screen thinner. Explanations, a mention of timing, a phrase that tried to dress itself as regret. I read none of it to the end. I blocked the number. I felt my heart cringe, like a muscle that had been clenched too long and now had to uncurl. "Good," Alana said. She picked up the box like it weighed nothing. "I'll drop this at Tarek's. He can be responsible for the handoff. He's been responsible for enough whispers, he can carry one truth." The night was wide and quiet once she left. I reached for my vow book without thinking. The ribbon unwound with a sigh. There, on the line where I had written, "I promise to walk beside you," I crossed out the U and wrote me. The word looked small and sure. I added more. "I promise to trust the voice that lives in my body. I promise not to sit in rooms where my spirit has to hold its breath. I promise to believe the little evidence and not wait for the big emergency. I promise to laugh in kitchens again. I promise rest and walks and songs that sound like wind through trees. I promise to set down what is not mine to carry. I promise to be the woman I wanted to be for someone else, for myself." The pen scratched. Outside, one of my neighbor's wind chimes clicked a tune like a kind of prayer. I read the words out loud, softly, like talking to a child at bedtime. Then I closed the book and put it on the nightstand like a hand I could reach for in the dark. Morning brought more messages, like rain tapping. Pastor Ruth called. "I'll come by this afternoon," she said. Not to ask why, to bring chicken salad and a list of therapists who won't tell you to be nicer to pain. Aaron, the HR manager whose card the coordinator had handed me, left a voicemail too. "We're all a little shocked," he said, voice measured. "No one at work knew. If anyone reaches out to press you for statements, know that you don't owe them anything. Also, off the record, if you need resources about changing locks, legal advocacy, or just a witness to boundaries, I'm around." He cleared his throat. "And for what it's worth, Ms. M, the way you handled yesterday, people who matter saw it." I texted him back, grateful for the formality. "Thank you. I won't be giving statements to anyone. I appreciate the resources." At school, I had 2 weeks left before summer break. I went in because my kids know how to sniff out a hurt even when you hide it in your pocket. I didn't want them to catch it through the walls of a closed door. I sat with Kayla, a 7th grader who had spent the last month refusing to touch her algebra book. "He lied to my mom," she said, twisting the sleeve of her hoodie. "He said he was working late. He was working on a baby." I didn't tell her my story. I let hers take up all our time, like it should. Your mom's pain isn't your homework, I said, gently, and she blinked at me like I'd said a magic word. You can feel sad and still learn how to find X. That's not betrayal. That's building a life where his choices don't live rent-free. She nodded, eyes swimming. How do I do that? One small thing at a time, I said. Start with a pencil in your hand. Finish 3 problems. Then go sit in the sun. That night, Alana and I sat with a stack of gift boxes. We opened, we logged, we wrote. Thank you for your generosity. The wedding did not take place. Please accept this return with our gratitude and our apology for the inconvenience. We signed each one together, our handwriting a double witness, hers slanted and quick, mine rounder, patient. Some people wrote back with notes that made tears sit in the corners of my eyes like guests refusing to overstay. One aunt tucked a check into her reply with a scribble, for your honeymoon for one. Somewhere with water. I mailed it back with a sticky note. Not necessary. If you want to help, buy school supplies for Ms. M's kids in August. She sent me a picture a week later of 20 blue backpacks lined up in her living room like a small army. 2 days after the non-wedding, Elena texted once, a soft ping. I hope you're all right. You don't need to respond. I looked at the sentence for a long minute, considering what it means to reply not for the drama, but for the thread of humanity that keeps women from burning alone. Thank you, I wrote. I am okay. I hope you and your son are safe and supported. She sent a single heart. We did not speak again, not then. On the weekend, Pastor Ruth came with a casserole dish that could survive the apocalypse. She set it down and sat at my table. Your face looks like it slept, she said. It slept, I said, surprised. A little. She nodded. People will be kind. Some will be cruel. Some will be nosy. Your job is to choose who gets to be loud in your life. She slid a notepad across the table. I also made a list. Things to do when you want to check his phone. Because you will want to, even if it's blocked. Bake muffins. Walk around the block twice. Delete old photos. Put $1 into a jar for August school supplies. Call me. I laughed. You know me. I know people, she said, smiling. We like to make the ache useful. We forget we can also just let it ache. Monday afternoon, I went to the jeweler's. The ring gleamed the way it always had, honest about the light it borrowed. The saleswoman recognized me. She had helped Marcus pick it. We stood in the halo of the display lights and had the kind of conversation women have in low voices when something has cracked. Process the return, no questions. I used the refund to pay the seamstress for the hours she had already given my dress, and I donated the dress to a local group that helps women build ceremonies out of thrift. It will be somebody's right dress, I said as I handed it over. The woman who took it wore a bracelet with small bells. They made a delicate sound when she reached for the hanger. It will, she said, and I believed her. June slid toward July. The magnolias browned at the edges and fell, one by one, like folded letters. I turned 32 with a lemon pie and 5 people at my kitchen table, the kind of birthday you can hold in one hand. Alana made a toast. To my sister, she said, raising her glass of ginger ale, who has always known how to leave a room with her head up. I bought myself a thin gold band, a ring so small it looks like a whisper. I wear it on my right hand. It catches light when I write and reminds me of the vows I said into an empty room and meant. Sometimes I turn it slowly, like a will going forward. The last time I saw Marcus, it was late August. I was in the grocery store, pushing a cart that held a dozen composition notebooks, 2 bunches of bananas, and a bouquet of eucalyptus for the smell. He was in the diapers aisle, a pack of wipes under his arm. He saw me before I saw him. He straightened like his body had just remembered how to stand. Maya, he said. Marcus, I replied. His beard was a little longer. There was a light smear of something on his shoulder, maybe spit up, maybe life. A baby's laugh rang from the next aisle, high and bright. He flinched. He swallowed. I am, he began, but I raised a hand, palm out. Not a stop sign. A blessing given from a distance. I know what you are, I said softly. Be gentle with the people who depend on you. That is all. He nodded, tears running their own course without his permission. "I don't deserve your. This isn't for you," I said, and smiled just enough to make it human. "It's for me." I turned my cart. The eucalyptus brushed my wrist, smelling like a forest I had not yet walked through. I went to the checkout. The cashier complimented my ring. I said, "It's a promise," and she said, "To who?" And I said, "To myself," and her smile widened like the aisle had grown wider too. Healing, it turns out, isn't a straight road. It's a little path that doubles back on itself, like a child learning how to walk home from school by landmarks. I learned my landmarks. There was a leather chair in a therapist's office that sighed when I sat down. A wall clock ticked with the steady patience of someone folding laundry. Dr. Lawson wore sensible shoes and a silver ring shaped like a leaf. A dish of peppermint candies sat by the tissues like a small mercy. "I feel embarrassed," I told her the first day. The window let in a soft rectangle of morning. Not just hurt. Embarrassed that I didn't know. "You did know," she said, not unkindly. "A part of you knew. You heard the song, you saw the sock, you held the receipt. You explained away the knowing to keep your life moving forward. That is not foolishness. That is a survival skill you no longer need." She taught me to pause when a memory snagged me. "Name 5 things you can see," she said. "4 you can touch. 3 you can hear. 2 you can smell. 1 you can taste." I named a plant in the corner with dusty leaves, light on the floor like a golden scarf, the smoothness of the ring on my right hand, the small scratch on the arm of the chair, the sound of a car door thumping shut outside, the peppermint dissolving on my tongue. My body softened around the shape of the present and let the past sit in the next chair instead of climbing into my lap. I told her about my vows. She asked if I would read them out loud. I did, voice catching in places like a hem caught on a nail. She nodded after the last line. "Beautiful," she said. "Now make a practice that anchors them." So I did. On Sunday mornings, I stood at my kitchen sink with the window open. The eucalyptus in a jar by the sink released a clean, green smell when I crushed a leaf between my fingers. I recited 1 line to the water. I promised it to the mug I rinsed, to the spoon, to my palms. You say enough lines out loud, and your walls begin to answer you back. Alana kept being herself, a lighthouse with legs. She'd swing by with her hair in a scarf and a bag of groceries like she was dropping off sunshine. "For your jar," she said once, handing me a stack of small envelopes. On the front, she'd written, "August school supplies. Dog adoption fee someday. New sheets. Just because." Inside each was a little bill. "When you feel like calling him," she said, "call your future instead." My mother planted marigolds in my front yard in July, the heat pinning her dress to her knees, the dirt soft and damp around her fingers. "They keep pests away," she said, pressing another seedling into the earth. "And they make the block look like it's smiling." She watered until the soil darkened and the smell rose up, rich and familiar. "When your father left the hospital for the last time," she added, straightening slow, "he told me I was going to be fine. I told him I didn't believe him. He said, 'Believe me later.'" She touched my cheek, her thumb rough with dirt. "You don't have to believe me today. Believe me later." There were days when I didn't. Days when a wedding invitation arrived, all thick paper and gold script, and my breath shortened, and I wanted to crawl back into the version of me who believed tidiness was truth. On those days, I texted Pastor Ruth, "I'm up." She'd reply, "Walk once around the block." I walked. The neighbors cat-eyed me, disdainful and comforting. A boy down the street pushed a bicycle too big for him and grinned when he finally swung his leg over and found the balance. I walked until my breath matched my steps again. Work gave me reasons to get out of my house and into other people's lives in small, useful ways. Kayla brought me her algebra test with AB on it and a smile that made her face look like it had discovered a secret. "Found X," she said, and for the first time all week, I laughed without the laugh rubbing against something sore. Summer scorched and then softened. The magnolia tree on my block dropped its last blossom, brown at the edges, soft as a left-behind note. I made new rituals for days when the ache coughed in my ribs. I took myself to the little diner where I'd once sat across from a man who ate fries like stitches. I ordered a slice of pie and ate it bite by bite, not as a fancy act of self-love, but as plain nourishment. The waitress topped off my coffee and told me about her granddaughter's spelling bee. I left a big tip, like a small vote for kindness. Elena texted once in September. It was brief. We're okay. Co-parenting. I got a new job. You don't owe me anything. I read it standing at my sink with my hands in soapy water. I dried one hand and typed back. I'm glad you're okay. I wish you peace. We left it there, two women waving from across a river that didn't need a bridge. I didn't track Marcus's consequences. I'm not a judge. People in our orbit filled me in whether I asked or not. Aaron let me know he'd moved to a different shift. There were trainings. HR words that try to tidy up a mess without pretending it wasn't one. I said thank you and didn't ask for more. That story wasn't mine anymore. Mine was the work of not letting bitterness call itself protection. In October, on a morning the color of a clean slate, I drove to the lake where he had asked me to marry him. I didn't go to rewrite anything. I went to tell the story to the place that had held the beginning and ask it to hold the middle too. The wind combed the water into small furrows. Ducks drew invisible lines with their beaks. A jogger passed, nodding, breath puffing like a small engine. Alana and my mother came with me, carrying thermoses of tea, a paper bag of honey biscuits, and a small navy book tied with a ribbon. My vow book. The old ribbon had a nick in it where I'd worried it with my thumbnail on the day that began this story. We found a bench, the same one, or a sister to it. The wood held the summer's warmth in its bones. I opened the book. The vows looked up at me like a mirror that had decided to smile. I read each line out loud. The wind tried to steal a few words. I said them twice. A woman with a dog paused, listened unapologetically, and then kept walking, her dog's tags chiming like bells. I tucked a magnolia petal in the book. It was one I had dried between pages and now carried like a pressed memory. It crinkled faintly under my fingers, a soft whisper. I slipped my thin gold ring off, held it between my thumb and index finger, and then slid it back on my right hand, slow and sure, as if I were threading me to me. My mother poured tea. Steam lifted, carrying the smell of bergamot and lemon peel. We ate biscuits that fell apart in honest ways. What would you tell Junyu if you could? Alana asked, licking honey off her thumb. That there is no such thing as wasted love, I said, watching the ducks knit the water. Only love that taught you too hard, and that you don't have to swallow hardness to prove you can. And what will you tell December you? My mother asked, eyes amused and kind. I will tell her to buy herself a coat that feels like a hug, I said. And to keep a spare pair of socks in the glove compartment. The world is better navigated with warm feet. We sat in the slice of sun. A child's laughter carried across the water, the sound skipping. I thought of that baby I'd seen in photos, the round cheeks, the moon pajamas. I hoped he would grow up in a home where truth could breathe. I hoped Marcus would choose to be the kind of father who shows up more than he explains. Hope doesn't cost me anything now. It doesn't bind me to anyone. It is simply a way of keeping my own heart from hardening. A week later, an invitation came to a colleague's wedding. The envelope was smooth under my hand. I stood with it by my window and listened to the wind and the distant sound of a lawnmower. I wrote my RSVP. Yes. I knew I could stand in a room where vows were spoken and hold mine in my pocket like a stone. At the reception, a slow song came on, and I excused myself to the patio and danced a little alone, the air cool on my forearms, the scent of night-blooming jasmine lifting. A man asked if I wanted to join him. He had a kind face, a careful way of phrasing, no hunger in it. I said, maybe next one, and meant, I am not ready and I am not sorry. On the way home, I stopped by the grocery store. I bought a rotisserie chicken, a bag of grapes, and a bouquet of marigolds for my mother. The cashier wore a pin that said first day. She fumbled the change and looked like she might apologize for existing. "You're doing great," I said. Her shoulders lowered a half-inch, and she smiled. Small rescues count, too. The holidays came. My living room held a little tree that smelled like a memory. I hung one ornament, a brass magnolia, and left the rest in their box. The quiet was soft, not empty. I sang along to the same two songs my father loved, a hymn that talks about grace like water, and an old R&B track that makes you shimmy even when you don't mean to. I set a place for me at my table and filled it sweet potato mash, green beans with almonds, a slice of pie. I ate slowly. I didn't feel sorry for myself. I felt present, like I had finally found the right house and was sitting in my own kitchen, listening to my clock tick and not wishing it away. On New Year's Day, I wrote one sentence on a sticky note and tucked it into the sugar bowl. Not a resolution. A reminder. Don't ignore the small truths. Sugar hides in everything, my mother says, but so does truth. If you listen close, it dissolves on your tongue, unmistakable as sweetness. It has been a year now. The marigolds have gone to seed and come back, stubborn and cheerful. My students are taller, their problems new and the same. A new counselor started down the hall with a laugh that carries, and sometimes we share snacks, and sometimes we share silence. I am not waiting for the next story to make me whole. I am living one that does. If I ever marry, it will be with my eyes open and my door open and the windows too. If I do not, I will still have a table and tea and vows that keep me company like good neighbors. I didn't keep the wedding gifts. I kept the lesson. And on nights when the house is quiet and the wind chimes pick up a tune on their own, I say my vows again, just to hear them ring.